Big Green exists because we believe that growing food changes lives. It helps you with nutrition security, it helps you with your mental health, it gets you out into nature. Our mission is to get every American growing food at some point in their life. We work in schools, building learning gardens where kids learn. We help homeowners or residents build gardens in their backyard. And we have the Big Green DAO, where we work with nonprofits to crowdsource who else should receive funding to help people grow food. When I got into this Big Green DAO, I thought it would take a lot of explaining to communicate how important this is, because we're turning philanthropy on its head. We're giving grant-making power to the front lines instead of the headquarters. My biggest surprise was how much everyone understood the responsibility that was on their shoulders, because if they do it correctly, it changes the power structure in philanthropy and does better work.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. I'm really excited to share the stage with you. We just watched an amazing video about Big Green. You two are longtime friends. I'd love for you, Antonio, Kimbal, either of you to start by sharing the story of how you came together for Big Green.
I think, Kimbal, you probably start with your story. It begins with you.
Yeah, thanks. I had a lot of a history with cooking food. I have restaurants. I'd worked with some school gardens, but in 2010, I broke my neck. I went down a ski hill on Jackson Hole Mountain and with Antonio. And Antonio was there as I was paralyzed. I ruptured my spine, C6 and C7, paralyzed for 3 days. And it was just this time to look at my life. I had this message from God to work on kids and food, and I had a food background, but I didn't quite get it, and yet that was the message. And Antonio was in the hospital with me the whole time while I was just kind of processing all of this, and I didn't know if I would be able to walk again. And they did say that surgery would heal me. They were very confident, but it took 3 days to get the surgeons to fly in, and so I woke up on a Wednesday morning after several days of being paralyzed that I could move my body. It was one of the most, as you can imagine, most traumatic and terrifying things, but also so powerful. It changed my life to work on kids and food. And so then I asked Antonio to help me, and he joined as the founding chairman of Big Green in 2010. And we have, I used Silicon Valley mindset to take the school garden movement and scale it. And so I had this design that would be a beautiful garden to play in, easy to teach in, right next to the playground, no fence around it, easy to maintain. So we could actually go work with the facilities departments. We could work with the school district level versus just a teacher in a school. But I think then I went to Chicago. I was doing it in Denver, and that's where I live. And then Antonio said, well, you got to come to Chicago. So I went to Chicago and.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny part of the story. So, but let me roll back a minute. I think Kimbal has under-described the intensity of the experience you went through, right? I think you often say that, but for the physical trauma, you would recommend the spiritual awakening of breaking.
I highly recommend the spiritual awakening.
And there was a moment where Kimbal really looked at us and looked at myself as probably in the hospital and said, I really need to work on kids and food. And I said to him, hey, if you get out of here, when you get out of here, we'll do it together, I'll help you. And part of helping him is him thinking through, using his background in technology and in entrepreneurship, what the most efficient and effective way to do this was, and how to help the most amount of kids with a beautiful product. And Kimbal really built a beautiful product. And so once the product was designed, we went to Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, and I want to shout out to the mayor that just got back from Japan. As ambassador, he said to us, okay, guys, you can...
Wait, hold on. You first of all, I get there, I wore hoodies and sneakers in those days, and Antonio's like, you got to wear a suit. It's like, what do you mean? I don't wear suits. So he went and bought me a...
Yeah, I mean, getting Kimbal, Kimbal grew. He's one of the few human beings that actually grew in adulthood, so he grew by another inch. He's already tall enough. Getting someone who's like 6'5", a suit in Chicago in 12-hour period is pretty hard to do. But you can't go to City Hall in Chicago without a suit on. So we switched now. He wears a jacket and I do.
Right.
Yeah, so we get him in a suit. We go over to see Ram. We go into Ram's office, and those Ram Manuel. He's like very fast, right? So I got it. We're gonna build school gardens. I want 100 of them. But, I'm gonna give you guys $1 million. You raise 4, and I want it done in 1 year. And if you don't get it done right, like you have to leave Chicago, Antonio.
Just to be clear, these are like 2,000 square foot outdoor classrooms in schools. In the city of Chicago, we would have to do 100 in 1 calendar year with permits and everything would be virtually impossible. So I said that to Ram, and he's like, don't worry about it. I will clear all of the red tape as long as you can deliver on the other side. And so in 1 year, we had to raise the $4 million and also do the general construction across the city of Chicago.
Yeah, I think what's important about this is it came directly out of Kimbal's heart. And the people we talked to in Chicago, the friends, the community we had there, they could see that passion. And they could also see that passion married with the idea that Kimbal had a mindset, and we had a mindset as an organization to make it very efficient, to really use people's money super well to help the kids. And at the time, Ram had told us he wanted these in the worst neighborhoods in Chicago. So they were going to the south side and the west side of Chicago. There were gardens being put in, like where we had people literally in the middle of the beach.
We were literally in a live shooting.
Yeah.
We were so crazy in Chicago. We're from a nice town in Colorado, and there's live shooting, and we were with kids in the garden, and we all duck, and the kids just don't even notice, because that's the life they live in. It's really, really profoundly different to what most of us understand as normal life.
Yeah, I think what I did not appreciate, I think Kimbal did appreciate, because he had spent his life cooking and being in gardens. I did not appreciate till I saw this, how important to the mental health of children these gardens are. And when you see an environment like this where kids are at recess or during their science class working in the garden and there's shootings going on, and Kimbal would go down to this part of town with actual DE agents. I mean, Ram was like, you cannot go down there.
Yeah, you actually, was you or Ram made me be escorted by a DEA agent with a gun, and I'm like, you serious? And I got down there and I was like, okay, thank you for coming with me.
Yeah, he's serious.
I didn't expect a live gunfight.
Yeah, but it's amazing how much this impacted not just the education, but the mental health of these children and their welfare and their well-being. It was really beautiful at enormous scale in 1 year.
Wow.
We've really learned that growing food changes these kids' lives. It's the way we design it is it's really next to the playground, and so they can use it as a place to just get a break. Recess can often be a time you want to play with your friends, but actually, if you're having a tough day, it's a beautiful place to have a break and just look after yourself. Of course, it helps with nutrition security, food literacy, growing food. I can't tell you how surprised I am when I go to a school even today, and we do a garden for the first time, and we're growing cherry tomatoes, and the kids don't know what it is. They probably know what a sliced tomato is, I guess, but they don't know what a cherry tomato is, and it's so surprising how little food literacy they have. So you have the mental health side, you have the nutrition security, then you have getting out into nature. Just how beautiful is that? Helping our kids in these tough neighborhoods actually have a little refuge that is nature. We're talking about in Chicago, like the tough soil, the tough ground and soil of
And I think that's
dirt
what's so
of
hard
Chicago.
too. I mean, you mentioned during COVID, the schools shut down, and this
Yes.
completely changed, and it impacted how you were thinking about Big Green as well. Can you share a little bit about how the DAO structure works and how
Absolutely.
you pivoted the model?
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you. Yeah, so we were doing this incredible work and changing kids' lives across by the time COVID hit, we were in 650 schools, building these 2,000 square foot outdoor classrooms that are edible schoolyards. And the government literally said, you have to stop what you're doing. Schools are closed. No one's allowed on school grounds. We were in shock. This is our purpose. This is what we do. And so we really had to do some soul searching. And so we at the time, there was a lot of learnings around the crypto space and blockchain and decentralized governance. And so we started to think along the lines of, well, what could we do through decentralized governance by bringing in nonprofits from around the country? Because if you're a local nonprofit, you're allowed on school grounds, but if you're a national nonprofit traveling in, you can't. And so we're like, well, this is a way we could actually get the wisdom of the front lines, we get the work effort and obviously being on the ground of the front lines. And so we created this decentralized autonomous organization using crypto philosophy and blockchain, where donors put funding into a treasury, and this community of nonprofits, with the guidance of Big Green. Big Green is the 501c3. We have to follow IRS rules, but we really guide it. But the nonprofits help us find other nonprofits that are doing good work in the space of helping Americans grow food again. And it's beautiful. I mean, frankly, what came out of it was we now have this community of 175 nonprofits who all believe that growing food changes lives, who are all working in their communities, these tough communities, whether they're doing community gardens or home gardens or school gardens. They believe growing food changes the lives of their community. And with these 175 nonprofits, we now gather in person once a year in Denver. It's a surprisingly lonely existence being a nonprofit. When you think you're doing good things for your community, and you really are, but frankly, you're very alone. If you're in South Atlanta working on gardens, you wouldn't even know who the North Atlanta group is. And this has become so beautiful to see this community of nonprofits come together. They share learnings with each other. This is when they come together in person. They do collaborative grant making, so they might raise money together now. We help them do that. We have found that this community has been able to amplify our growth, and the community does the work for us as well. So we went from a 65-person nonprofit 501c3 to a 12-person 501c3. We went from servicing 650 gardens in 10 years to 6,000 gardens in 3 years. So we went like a 10x scale with 20% of the staff. And that decentralized autonomous organization enables us to be so much more efficient, go right to the front lines without having to cover a huge bureaucracy. The funding in our DAO, 95% goes to the front lines. If you were to do it in any other nonprofit way, in fact, how we used to do it, you'd be lucky if 30% went to the front lines. And so it's been profound. It's been extremely good on cost-effective philanthropy. And also, it has been so beautiful watching this community come together.
I mean, I think one of Kimbal's great gifts is, among his many great gifts, is building community. We nicknamed him the Lord of Joy, right? Because he brings people together. It was beginning around food in the restaurants, and then in the gardens, and now at very high scale with these community foundations that are doing gardens. And what's interesting about this is, as the physics of any organization scales, whether it's for-profit or non-profit, are the same. Right, you have someone with passion that applies their skill set, yours in particular building community, with technology to make it way more efficient and effective. And so this is a combination of the heart of Kimbal's gifts and of our skills as technologists, and the skills that Kimbal has as technologists, to bring this all together to create something that went from, in the midst of COVID, right, this great challenge, we responded to that challenge with unbelievable resilience to create something that's actually at much higher scale with much better return on capital. I mean, if we do this in business, we're patting ourselves in the back and build great companies like SpaceX. I mean, same kind of analysis is being done, same kind of thinking applied to the nonprofit world, and it's the same. It's amazing.
What would you say to, I think there's this notion that the idea of anything that's decentralized for operations can be challenging. So what's the counter argument for those who don't believe that this is the right model?
Look, I mean, Kimbal operates this, so I'll let him answer. I'll just give you my quick view, which is, I think the governance, as an observer and a donor now to this organization, the governance is great because you have full transparency. Mm-hmm. You often give money to nonprofits. I give a fair amount of money to nonprofits, and you don't really know what happens. You can't really see where it all goes. What Kimbal's enabled here is not just the community and the governance around the community of who gets the money, but also the donors can see straight through to where the money is going. I think this is great. It is a much more effective way as a donor and as a philanthropist to see how your capital is being used.
Yeah, I think that the centralized approach, we did it for 10 years. We knew what we were doing. I'm a good operator, executor. We were able to be very effective. We could measure our results very cleanly, and we knew what we were doing. But you just can't scale. I mean, you just, you get to 650 schools after 10 years, you pat yourself on the back. But there are 100,000 schools in America. I will not get all the schools done in my lifetime if I kept going. And this decentralized approach has now enabled us to scale to 6,000 schools in just a few years. And we will get to every school in America within the next few years with philanthropic support from folks like you guys. The transparency it's really a way of building trust. And I think people default to centralized because they have a fear that it's not going to be used well. And if you can trust the system by full transparency, you can even participate as a voter, as a donor. You can join the in-person meetup if you're passionate about doing that. You're welcomed. We have donors as well as nonprofits in our annual event. So I think that centralized does come from a place of fear. And when you trust what the system is and you can see it, trust comes from, I believe you earn trust. You don't just give trust. And so this approach, this crypto structure, they call it a trustless system, but I think it's the other way around. Because it's so transparent, you understand what's going on, you can see all of the movements, you actually build trust. And I love that. It's not just trust between the donor and the nonprofit, but it's between the nonprofits. They know what each other's getting, and it's sometimes more than the other, and it's just totally transparent. And I think that transparency has been profound, and I don't think we could have done it without the blockchain technology.
Yeah, what's fascinating too, Antonio was speaking about, you're both approaching this idea of wellness and solving for wellness in a scalable way, bringing your expertise from Tesla, from SpaceX. Is it fragmented? If in your case, Kimbal, you're solving for it by way of nutrition and food insecurity, and Antonio, in your case, more from the angle of neuroscience. Perhaps you can share a bit about that, and we can see, if it connects the dots.
When I turned 50, I'm over 50 now, I started a foundation that is focused on mental health wellness, particularly for veterans, for PTSD and victims of sexual violence. And we've been doing everything from funding a unit of one, a person going for therapy, to research, to actual programs at the VA, all the way to Harvard University, that is thinking about societal structures and how we impact both from the divinity school, the law school, and the humanities, a different perspective, impact the way society thinks about mental health, these issues, and prepares it for the technologies and the medicines that are coming through the system today. So we have not gone to the level of decentralization that Kimbal's talking about, but we're thinking about it at each level, the unit of one, I'd say the research unit, which is a unit of many, all the way to society in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge believer in what Antonio is doing on the psychedelic wellness side. And then the wellness for us, mental health. When our kids go into the garden, you just see their whole energy, their whole nervous system just calms, and they whatever's going on in their day, it could be something as simple as an argument with a classmate, it could be something much more serious. We have teachers that use our gardens in the morning when kids who do actually come from very troubled homes, they will meet their kids in the garden at 7:30 in the morning, and they'll just spend 10 to 15 minutes just calming the child down. The mental health side of gardens can't be overestimated, and it's so wonderful to have a safe place. Our gardens become a safe place in a school. It's absolutely beautiful to be part of it, and I see the work that Antonio is doing with wellness amongst our veterans, with PTSD, and how he's able to calm their nervous system in their way. We're all here to make our community thrive. We're all here to once you get to a certain age and a certain wealth or whatever, success or whatever you want to call it, you start to turn back towards service and how can you be of service. And I really learned a lot from Antonio about being in service, and really loved working with him and building Big Green. And it's really about if we can all help our community be mentally well and fed well and understand nutrition. I think we're going to create a great world.
Yeah, I think we're friends for many reasons. We've been friends for a long time. But together, I think in our community around us as well, the people we work with, the companies we work on, it really is about reducing suffering and increasing joy. That is ultimately what we're trying to do. And I think if we all do that, the world will get a lot better.
I definitely agree. Big Green will be on site. For those of you who are here through the rest of the week, definitely check out the Big Green bus that will be set up downstairs on Wednesday and Thursday. Kimbal,
I'm going to be hosting an intimate event this evening. Anyone who's interested in donating, we've raised over $100 million in our life as Big Green. We're kicking off a $10 million capital campaign for the Big Green DAO. We have our bus, if you're curious to learn more about Big Green. If you're interested in something that would be $1 million plus donation, I'd love to meet with you one-on-one. And please join for the event this evening, where we'll get to mingle a bit more. And looking forward to talking to you about Big Green and really helping us all change Americans' lives through growing of food.
Great. Thank you so much for both of you for being here. And see you downstairs.
Thank you.